The evening settled into a hushed stillness, a familiar cloak draping over our home like a secret waiting to be uncovered. The refrigerator's soft hum filled the kitchen, a gentle reminder of life amidst the stillness, while the delicate scent of lavender from the diffuser wove through the air, creating an atmosphere thick with tranquility. Curled up on the couch, I held a book in my lap, the soft glow of the evening lamp enveloping the room in a warm golden embrace. In that fleeting instant, tranquility enveloped me, a precious gem amidst the relentless storm of everyday existence. And then he stepped through the door. Ethan stood at the edge of the world, the weight of his name echoing in the silence around him. My stepson, a figure woven into the fabric of my life, carries with him the weight of unspoken stories and hidden depths. At 18, he loomed over me at 6'2", exuding a quiet confidence that made it easy to overlook the fact that he was still just a kid. But tonight, that confidence had vanished into thin air. He crept into the room, hands buried deep in the pockets of his hoodie, his shoulders hunched as if he were trying to shrink away from the world around him. His dark, tousled hair tumbled into his eyes, and his gaze flickered anxiously around the room before finally resting on the floor. "Hey," he whispered, his voice a fragile thread in the stillness. I lifted my gaze from the pages, carefully placing the book down as if it held secrets too precious to disturb. "Hey, Ethan, what's going on?" He paused, his weight shifting uneasily from one foot to the other as uncertainty gnawed at him. I beckoned to the empty space on the couch beside me, my voice laced with a playful charm. "Absolutely, take a seat and make yourself comfortable." He paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face, before finally surrendering to the embrace of the armchair opposite me. He raked his fingers through his hair, his eyes steadfastly averted from mine. I observed him intently, my heart heavy with longing for his pain. Ethan, typically the life of the party, felt an unsettling shift within him tonight, as if shadows danced around his thoughts, pulling him into a silence he couldn't escape. Exposed. "What thoughts are swirling in your head?" I urged softly. He inhaled deeply, his gaze locked onto the ground beneath him. "It revolves around my girlfriend. We've been discussing, taking that leap." I nodded slowly, my face a mask of calm, yet my eyes were sharp and focused, absorbing every detail. Our bond was forged in the fires of trust and respect, a foundation so solid that I had always assured him he could confide in me about anything, no matter how dark or daunting. "All right," I replied, my voice steady, masking the storm brewing within. "What haunts your thoughts?" Ethan finally lifted his gaze, his cheeks burning with a deep flush of embarrassment. Uncertainty loomed like a shadow, wrapping around the mind, leaving a lingering question that echoed in the silence. I've never ventured into this territory before. I need to ensure that I don't ruin this chance. A gentle smile graced my lips, my heart swelling with a profound affection for the young man who had woven himself into the fabric of my life, becoming as dear to me as family. "Ethan, the fluttering in your stomach is a familiar companion on the brink of something new and exhilarating. Yet the heart of it all lies in the connection forged through communication with your partner. Ensure that you both share a mutual understanding, taking your time to explore every nuance. This journey isn't merely about perfection. It's about being fully engaged and honoring each other's presence." He nodded, his brow knitted in concentration as he took in my words. "But what if she turns away, her face clouded with disappointment? Or have I made a grave mistake?" I leaned forward, my voice enveloping the room with a comforting warmth. Feeling self-conscious is a common experience that many can relate to. Keep in mind, this journey involves both of you. Engage her in conversation about her boundaries, and don't hesitate to delve deeper with your inquiries. And if something feels off, it's perfectly acceptable to pause. Above all, it's essential that you both feel at ease and are reveling in the moment. Ethan exhaled, a release of tension he hadn't even known he was carrying. "Thank you, Eleanor. I want it to be unforgettable for her, Your deep concern reveals that you are already moving in the right direction. Simply embrace who you are, Ethan. That's all anyone truly desires." He nodded once more, a faint smile playing at the edges of his lips. "Thank you. That truly makes a difference. Anytime, I replied, my heart brimming with emotion. And keep in mind, I am always here for you, ready to answer any questions that may arise. No judgment, understood? Ethan let out a soft chuckle, the weight on his shoulders beginning to lift, a sense of relief washing over him. A sense of relief washing over. Understood, I'll remember that. As the conversation drew to a close, a whirlwind of emotions surged within me. Ethan felt a surge of pride, a deep and resonant emotion that reflected the thoughtful and considerate young man he had grown into. A wave of nostalgia washed over him, a bittersweet reminder of the boy he once was, now on the precipice of adulthood. A deep and abiding gratitude surged within me for the bond we shared, a connection that had deepened and flourished through the passage of time. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the house enveloped me in a heavy silence, the stillness pierced only by the gentle rhythm of my own breathing. My mind wandered back to Ethan, the memories swirling like shadows in the depths of my consciousness. His heart raced with a palpable tension. His fragility, his trust in me, the way he opened up about something so profoundly personal, was a moment that lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. There was an undeniable intensity in the way he had bared his soul to me, the way he had reached out for my guidance. As I turned onto my side, the cool sheets caressed my skin, and my thoughts began to drift into the unknown. The vivid image of his flushed cheeks lingered, the way his hands danced nervously, and the haunting echo of his voice filled the air. It haunted my mind. A soft, enigmatic hum lingered in the air, an elusive sound that danced just beyond my grasp. My fingers glided over my stomach, moving deliberately upward as I conjured the image of him in the room with me. His tall frame loomed, a shadow of uncertainty, as his eyes locked onto mine, pleading for reassurance. My breath caught in my throat as my hand descended, the heat of my own touch igniting a fire within me. With my eyes shut tight, I surrendered to the vivid world unfolding within my mind. His hands, trembling with anticipation, stretched out toward me, filled with a mix of hesitation and longing. His voice quivered, a haunting whisper that called my name into the shadows. A shiver raced down my spine, my hips instinctively arching as I pressed my fingers deeper, surrendering to the intoxicating rhythm that enveloped me. A sense of wrongness gnawed at me, a truth I couldn't escape. Yet, in the suffocating shadows of the room, where silence reigned and my thoughts echoed like whispers in the void, it felt unavoidable. Ethan had shed the remnants of his boyhood. He was a man, powerful yet uncertain, wrapped in layers of raw vulnerability that tugged at the heart. As the waves of pleasure enveloped me, a tantalizing thought flickered in my mind. What would it be like to share with him my understanding of relationships, to help him find his own voice in them? As the tension shattered, I found myself lying there, quaking, my heart racing wildly within my chest. Guilt and longing intertwined in the depths of my mind, yet beneath the turmoil lay an unexpected clarity that pierced through the chaos. Ethan placed his trust in me. His reliance on my strength was palpable, and I, no matter the circumstances, I would stand by his side, unwavering and resolute. The following day, as I stood in the kitchen, deftly slicing vegetables for dinner, the sudden creak of the front door echoed through the house, sending a shiver down my spine. I looked up, anticipation coursing through me, expecting Ethan to burst in with his signature carefree grin, perhaps flinging his backpack onto the couch and launching into a lively recount of his day. Yet that was not the course of events. He shuffled in, shoulders hunched, his hoodie drawn tight over his head, a makeshift shield against the world. He averted his gaze, silence hanging heavily between us. He strode past me, his gaze locked onto the ground, and vanished into the shadows of the hallway. In the stillness that followed, the gentle click of his bedroom door echoed in the silence. I stood there, knife clutched tightly in my hand, my gaze fixed on him as he disappeared into the shadows. My first instinct surged within me, urging me to call out, to inquire if he was okay. But an unseen force restrained my voice. His face was ashen, his expression vacant, a silent warning that now was not the moment to press further. The following days unfolded in a relentless, unchanging rhythm. Each morning, Ethan would depart for university, his lips sealed in a heavy silence, and each evening he would return, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging in the air like a thick fog. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he would vanish into his room, leaving me with only the faint echoes of music or the soft whir of his laptop. Yet, he never emerged, neither for dinner, nor for conversation, nor for any purpose at all. Initially, I convinced myself it was merely a fleeting moment. Teenagers were often engulfed in their own storms of emotion, and perhaps he was simply weathering a rough day. Yet, as the days slipped into a week, an unsettling sense gnawed at me, whispering that something deeper was amiss, deeply unsettling. I approached his door several times, my knuckles rapping against the wood, hoping to coax him out for a cup of tea or a stroll through the neighborhood. Each time, however, he responded with the same disheartening words, a mumbled, "Not now, Eleanor," or "I'm fine," his voice flat and distant, echoing the growing chasm between us. It was more than his silence that gnawed at my insides. He moved with an air of confidence that drew attention, a silent command that spoke volumes without uttering a word. Ethan had once radiated vitality, exuding confidence in every step he took, but now he appeared minuscule, as if he were attempting to weave himself into the darkness, to vanish completely. One evening, after yet another dinner where Ethan remained locked away in his room, I reached a breaking point. Enough was enough. It tore at my heart to witness him in this state, so shut away, so adrift in his own despair. I had to uncover the truth, no matter how fiercely he guarded it. As I navigated the dimly lit hallway toward his room, my heart raced, each beat echoing in the silence around me. With my heart racing, I lingered just outside his door, drawing in a deep breath before my knuckles met the wood with a gentle tap. "Ethan," I called, my voice a soft whisper yet resolute. "May I enter?" A heavy silence hung in the air, thick with anticipation, before his muffled voice finally broke through. "Indeed." Indeed. With a deep breath, I swung the door open and crossed the threshold into the unknown. The room lay shrouded in shadows, curtains tightly drawn, as Ethan reclined on his bed, his gaze fixed on the ceiling above, lost in thought. As I stepped inside, his gaze remained fixed elsewhere, yet the tension radiating from his shoulders was palpable. I noticed his hands, tightly balled into fists at his sides, a silent testament to the storm brewing within him. I whispered, lowering myself onto the edge of the bed, "Your silence has been unsettling, and a deep concern gnaws at me for your well-being." He remained silent, his eyes locked on the ceiling, as if searching for answers in the cracks above. But then, with a deliberate slowness, he shifted his gaze toward me. His eyes, rimmed with red, held a depth of despair that pierced through the air, making my heart ache with an unbearable weight. "I'm fine," he muttered, his voice a rasping whisper that hung in the air like a fragile thread. I shook my head, my fingers brushing against his arm as I sought to connect with him in that moment. "Absolutely not. I can see right through you." "Speak to me, Ethan, kindly." The room was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant, relentless ticking of the clock on Ethan's nightstand. I perched on the edge of his bed, my fingers lightly tracing the contours of his arm, anticipation hanging thick in the air as I awaited his words. He lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, his chest heaving with shallow breaths, a pallor washing over his face, etched with strain. At last, he drew a deep, shuddering breath, turning his gaze toward me. His eyes, glassy and haunted, brimmed with a pain that constricted my chest. "It's stupid," he murmured once more, his voice barely breaking the silence. "It's not stupid," I insisted, my grip tightening around his arm. "Whatever it is, it's tearing you apart, and I'm desperate to help you, Ethan. But I can't reach you if you keep your pain locked away." He paused, his jaw tightening as if he were waging a silent battle against the surge of tears threatening to spill. His eyes were a battlefield, a tumultuous clash of desires, one side yearning to bottle everything up, while the other screamed for release. At last, he found his voice, quivering with emotion. "It revolves around my girlfriend. We were on the brink of it all. I nodded, my face a mask of calm yet radiating encouragement. All right, reveal to me the unfolding events. He gulped, a wave of heat rushing to his cheeks as embarrassment washed over him. It began with a sense of ease. Our lips met in a fervent embrace, fingers exploring with a tantalizing urgency, and the world around us faded away, leaving only the intoxicating sensation of pure bliss. But then, he faltered, his cheeks flushing deeper, and I could see the weight of shame clouding his gaze. But then what would happen next? I urged softly. He inhaled sharply, his voice trembling as he uttered the words. When she caught sight of me, bare from the waist down, her eyes widened in shock. I can't do this, she exclaimed, her voice trembling, and just like that she froze in place. A deep frown creased my brow, and an ache blossomed in my heart for him. What transpired? He averted his gaze, his voice sinking to a mere whisper, barely cutting through the silence. She whispered that it was overwhelming, that she couldn't bear the weight of it. A wave of sympathy washed over me, my heart constricting at the anguish lacing his words. Oh, Ethan. He shook his head, his face burning with the sting of humiliation. She promised me something thrilling, something I craved, but after what felt like an eternity of anticipation, her energy waned, and the moment slipped away, leaving me wanting more. The frustration in his voice pierced through the air, a raw ache of rejection that shattered my heart into a million pieces. But then he pressed on, his voice trembling with an intensity that sent shivers down the spine. Now, she's spreading the word at university, sharing it with her friends and mine. Laughter echoes around me, a chorus of voices branding me as broken, twisted, as if a shadow lingers within me, whispering that something is amiss. The words lingered in the air, thick with malice, igniting a fierce wave of anger within me for his sake. How could anyone be so utterly thoughtless, so chillingly heartless? Ethan stood at the edge of the world, the weight of destiny heavy on his shoulders. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Not a single thing. He gazed at me, his eyes overflowing with tears, and I could sense the uncertainty etched across his face. Then why does it feel so palpable? Like a shadow lurking in the corners. Why do the whispers echo in every conversation, haunting the air around us? With a heavy sigh, my thoughts spiraled in a chaotic dance, each word eluding my grasp like shadows in the night. Hear me out. You are not shattered. You are not flawed. You are extraordinary, one of a kind. Unconventional, perhaps, yet undeniably in the most captivating manner. And anyone who dares to claim otherwise is simply blind to the truth. His expression was a mask of doubt, yet he chose silence over confrontation. He sat up, the weight of his emotions pressing down on him as he wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm at a loss. I can't figure out my next move. A sense of disorientation envelops me, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. I extended my arms and enveloped him in a fierce embrace, gripping him close. Ethan, you are not alone. I've arrived, and together, we will unravel this mystery. By any means necessary. He clung to me, his body trembling ever so slightly, igniting a fierce wave of protective love within me. He was just a child, so fragile, and it tore at my heart to see him endure such pain. Yet, an unwavering resolve surged within me, compelling me to stand by his side, to guide him through the storm, come what may. After what felt like an eternity, he finally drew back. His expression steadied, yet the shadows of pain still danced in his eyes, my deepest gratitude. He spoke softly, his voice quaking with emotion. I smiled gently, my fingers gliding through the air as they tucked a stray lock of hair behind his ear. It was always Ethan, forever. We lingered in silence, the heavy tension of our unspoken words hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. I could sense the cogs whirring in his mind, the fierce battle to comprehend the whirlwind of events that had unfolded. At last, the stillness shattered. What do you think of this? I spoke softly. Tomorrow evening we'll delve deeper into this, and together we'll unravel the mystery, all right? He nodded, a flicker of relief softening his features, as if a weight had been lifted just slightly from his shoulders. Understood. Thank you, Eleanor. As I stepped out of his room that night, a whirlwind of emotions surged within me. Sadness gripped my heart for the pain he endured. Anger simmered at the cruelty inflicted by others, and a fierce determination ignited in my soul to guide him back to the person he once was. Ethan possessed a strength he had yet to fully recognize, and I was determined to unleash that potential within him no matter the cost. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I resolved to create an atmosphere of warmth and ease for Ethan. With meticulous attention, I crafted one of his beloved dishes, spaghetti accompanied by golden garlic bread and a crisp side salad. The table was set with precision, candles flickering softly, casting a warm glow that enveloped the room in an inviting embrace. As he stepped into the kitchen, a subtle shift crossed his face, and I noticed the tightness in his shoulders begin to fade, if only for a moment. "It smells incredible," he murmured, his voice low yet filled with sincerity. I offered him a plate, a smile playing on my lips. "I have a delicious meal prepared just for you. Let's indulge together." We gathered around the table, the air thick with unspoken tension. I forced myself to keep the conversation buoyant, launching a barrage of questions about his classes and friends, while weaving in a few light-hearted tales from my own day, hoping to draw him out of his shell. Gradually, the atmosphere transformed, and as we polished off our meal, Ethan found himself chuckling softly, his eyes sparkling with a newfound light that had been absent for far too long. Once dinner had concluded, we transitioned to the living room, the air thick with anticipation. The candles on the table flickered, their soft glow dancing across the walls, wrapping the room in a warm, intimate embrace. I sank into the sofa, my hand beckoning the empty space beside me, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan lingered in uncertainty before finally taking his place next to me. We engaged in conversation for what felt like an eternity, words spilling forth effortlessly, yet beneath the surface, an undeniable tension crackled in the air. Ethan bore the heavy burden of the past, and I sensed the moment had come to confront it head-on. "Ethan," I murmured softly, pivoting to meet his gaze, "what are your thoughts on the conversation we had last night?" He gazed at his hands, a warm flush creeping across his cheeks. "I'm torn, caught in a web of doubt. I want to trust you, truly. But the whispers of others linger in my mind, refusing to fade away." I nodded, a deep ache settling in my heart for him. "I get it, but there are moments when the only path to conquering these emotions is to confront them directly, to unveil the truth behind the shadows." He looked up at me, his face a canvas of uncertainty. "What are you trying to say?" With a steadying inhale, I weighed each word with precision. "Ethan, I believe it would be beneficial if you could demonstrate for me, not to put you in an awkward position, but to provide you with the reassurance you need, truly, to show you that everything is perfectly fine." His eyes widened, a spark of panic flaring to life across his face. "Eleanor," I extended my hand, gently resting it on his arm. "You may hesitate, and that's perfectly fine. But I want you to feel the warmth of safety that surrounds you when you're with me. Only acceptance, only freedom, just truthfulness." He lingered in uncertainty, his breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, before at last he gave a reluctant nod. "Understood." He rose to his feet, his hands quivering ever so slightly as they moved toward the waistband of his sweatpants. The fear flickered in his eyes, a raw vulnerability that twisted my heart with an aching intensity. With trembling hands, he gradually lowered them, a deep flush spreading across his cheeks as embarrassment washed over him. In that fleeting instant, I found myself utterly paralyzed. The magnitude loomed. It was beyond anything I had anticipated. Yet, that was not the revelation that truly captivated me. He stood there, a figure of uncertainty, vulnerability radiating from him, as though he braced himself for the sting of rejection. "There's a profound truth within you, a hidden blessing waiting to be unveiled. Embrace the essence of your being with pride." He cast his gaze downward, his hands trembling with unease. "Yet, what if it overwhelms us? What if no one is able to?" I interrupted him softly, my voice steady yet compassionate. "That can't be right. It all hinges on discovering that perfect partner, one who truly values you for your authentic self. And until that moment arrives, there's no disgrace in venturing into the unknown alone." He looked up at me, his face a canvas of uncertainty, Yet, I had already attempted that. The plan had failed spectacularly. For a fleeting moment, I paused, the weight of my words pressing heavily on my mind. Ethan, what if we took a step back and discussed this together to better understand what you're feeling? What if I guided you to the answer? His eyes widened, revealing the turmoil that churned within him. What I'm trying to say is, I have no desire to put you in an awkward position. I shook my head, my voice unwavering, a calm resolve coursing through me. You are not. I'm here for you, Ethan, always ready to stand by your side. Whatever you desire. He nodded, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, his cheeks still tinged with a deep crimson. I motioned for him to take a seat beside me once more, the air thick with unspoken tension. As he did, I reached out, my fingers brushing softly against his thigh, drawing nearer with each heartbeat. Relax, I whispered, my voice a gentle balm in the tense air. This tale unfolds around you, about guiding you to embrace the essence of who you truly are. The tension radiated from his body as I started to guide him, my touch a delicate balance of gentleness and strength. His breath came in rapid bursts, and I could see a storm of emotion swirling across his face. A shroud of uncertainty hung in the air, giving way to a wave of relief, yet beneath it all, a flicker of something deeper stirred, waiting to be uncovered. As I pressed on, a subtle transformation took hold of him. His tension eased, and his body began to yield to the moment. In that intimate moment, a delicate dance of vulnerability and trust unfolded between us. I was acutely aware of the need to center everything around his comfort and the soothing reassurance that enveloped us both. He let out a soft groan, his head tilting back against the sofa, and I watched as the tension in his body slowly unraveled like a tightly wound coil finally set free. At last, he found his release, a soft sigh slipping from his lips as he leaned back, spent yet undeniably more at peace. I extended a tissue toward him, my smile gentle yet encouraging as he wiped away the remnants of his turmoil. Do you see it? I whispered softly, tucking a stray lock of hair behind his ear. There's no reason to feel embarrassed. He nodded, his face still flushed, yet his eyes sparkled with a newfound clarity, sharper than they had been in days. I find myself at a loss for words. Silence enveloped the moment, heavy with unspoken words. I responded, my voice enveloping the air with warmth. Remember, you are not alone in this journey, all right? We will face this challenge side by side, united in our resolve. He smiled faintly, a flicker of relief washing over him, and we lingered in the stillness, the air thick with unspoken understanding. The room enveloped us in warmth, the air crackling with an unspoken promise of healing. And in that moment, I realized we had crossed a threshold into something transformative. As we finally said our goodbyes for the night, a whirlwind of emotions surged within me. Pride swelled in my chest for the courage he had displayed. Relief washed over me as I sensed him rediscovering his true self, and a deep, quiet gratitude settled in my heart for the unbreakable bond we had forged. Ethan possessed a strength he had yet to discover, and I was resolute in my mission to awaken that power within him. The morning light poured through the kitchen windows, bathing the room in a warm golden embrace that seemed to whisper secrets of the day ahead. The air crackled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the tantalizing sizzle of scrambled eggs dancing in the pan. I stood at the stove, flipping a slice of toast, my thoughts haunted by the shadows of the previous night's events. The air was thick with intimacy, a fragile moment that hung between us, and I clung to the hope that it had offered Ethan the reassurance he so desperately needed. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen moments later, his hair tousled from sleep, the fabric of his hoodie draping casually over his tall frame. With a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, he cautiously pulled out a chair, the wood scraping softly against the floor, before settling into the seat at the table. "Morning," I said, my smile bright as I set a steaming plate of eggs and toast before him. He glanced up, our eyes locking for just a heartbeat, before his gaze fell back to the food, a flicker of something unspoken lingering in the air between us. I settled into my seat, the warmth of the coffee cup cradled in my hands, my gaze locked onto him with unwavering intensity. The silence enveloped us, heavy and suffocating, laden with all the words we dared not utter. Ethan toyed with his food, the fork's soft clink against the plate echoing in the charged silence, and an electric tension hung thick in the air. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the ground. "Yeah, who are you?" "Fine," I replied, my voice unwavering. I paused, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Ethan, about last night?" He froze, his fork suspended in mid-air above the plate, and I could see the subtle flush rising along his neck. "Indeed. I just want to make sure you're okay," I said, my voice a gentle caress, yet resolute. "I know it was overwhelming, and I don't want you to feel pressured to share if you're not ready. But I'm here if you need me." He set his fork down with deliberate slowness, his hands coming together in a tight clasp on the table. He fixed his gaze on them, tension coiling in the air as his jaw clenched and unclenched, a silent battle raging within him as he sought the elusive words that danced just out of reach. I'm okay," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper yet filled with genuine conviction. "Actually, I'm more than okay. Last night was..." It truly captivated me. A small smile crept onto my lips, a wave of relief enveloping me. "I'm glad, Ethan. My only wish is for you to embrace who you are." He looked up at me, his gaze locking onto mine for the first time that morning. "Do you think we could do it again tonight?" I halted, weighing the gravity of his request. The air was thick with tension, a precarious balance that demanded meticulous maneuvering. Yet, in his eyes, I could see the weight of its significance, the profound impact it had carved into his life. "All right," I murmured, a hint of intrigue in my voice. "But this time let's add an element of discovery." His eyebrow arched, a spark of curiosity igniting in his gaze. "Educational," I echoed, my voice a blend of softness and resolve. "I believe it might be beneficial for us to watch an adult movie together, one that illustrates how your size isn't uncommon, that it can even be a gift." Ethan paused, his cheeks flushing deeper, yet I noticed a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "All right, if you believe it will help," he said, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "It will," I promised, my fingers wrapping around his hand, a silent vow of support as the weight of the moment hung between us. "Trust me." The words echoed in my mind as I stood before my closet, the weight of the day pressing down on me. Ethan had left for university, and now I was alone, grappling with the decision of what to wear for the evening ahead. The night beckoned, a canvas waiting to be painted with warmth and allure, a space where comfort intertwined with seduction, promising an experience that would linger in memory. After much contemplation, I chose a sleek, form-fitting black dress that embraced my curves perfectly, accentuating every alluring detail. The fabric caressed the skin with a soft, silky touch, exuding an allure that was subtle yet impossible to ignore. Underneath, I selected a delicate set of black lace lingerie, a whisper of allure that felt both understated and tantalizing, crafted solely for my own pleasure. I yearned to exude confidence, to establish the atmosphere for the evening, while ensuring that Ethan felt at ease, free from any pressure. As I slipped into the dress, the fabric clung to me like a second skin. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and a smile crept across my face, a spark of anticipation igniting within me. It was a gaze that danced on the edge of elegance and allure, and I clung to the hope that it would soothe Ethan's restless spirit. As Ethan stepped through the threshold that evening, he halted, his gaze locking onto mine, a flicker of surprise igniting in his eyes. The faint blush crept up his neck like a whisper of crimson, and I responded with a warm smile, a silent invitation into the unspoken tension between us. "Hey," I whispered, my hand beckoning toward the sofa, inviting them to take a seat. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes as he approached, his hands betraying his anxiety with restless movements. As I flicked on the movie, the screen burst into life, casting a warm glow around us. We settled into the moment, enveloped in a cocoon of comfortable silence, our eyes glued to the unfolding story. As the scene unfolded, I highlighted the actors who mirrored Ethan in stature, emphasizing that there was nothing peculiar or amiss about him. "Look," I said, pointing to the screen. There are countless men like you. In the right light, it's something to take pride in. Ethan's gaze was fixed, a palpable tension easing from his posture as he took in my words. As the weight of uncertainty lifted, I watched as his shoulders relaxed, a newfound confidence beginning to radiate from his stance. As the movie unfolded, I felt a transformation within him, a daring spark igniting where there had once been hesitation. He faced me, his gaze deep and intense, swirling with an intoxicating blend of curiosity and longing. "Eleanor," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with uncertainty. "Do you believe we can bring that moment to life, the one captured on the screen?" I halted, taken aback yet ready for the inquiry that hung in the air. The request hung in the air, daring and audacious, yet I could sense the weight of its significance to him. It was a longing for power, a craving to be wanted, and I could almost feel the intensity of his desire radiating from him. "All right," I whispered, my head tilting in agreement, "but only if you're absolutely certain." He nodded eagerly, his eyes alight with a blend of excitement and gratitude that seemed to pulse with unspoken possibilities. "I have no doubt." The scene on the screen transformed, a tantalizing dance unfolding with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The woman moved with an enchanting grace, her undressing an act that felt both mesmerizing and deeply personal. I caught a glimpse of Ethan from the edge of my vision, observing the shift in his breath, the intensity of his gaze locked onto the flickering screen before us. His expression held a vulnerability that tugged at my heart, a blend of curiosity and nervousness that sent a sharp ache through my chest. I envisioned this as a pivotal moment for him, a chance for healing, acceptance, and a deep connection. Silently, I rose to my feet, each movement measured and intentional, echoing the woman on the screen. Ethan's gaze locked onto mine, his eyes widening with intrigue as I started to sway to the intoxicating rhythm of the music, echoing from the screen. The dress clung to my body like a second skin, its sleek fabric whispering secrets with every step I took, a tantalizing caress that heightened my senses. His gaze bore down on me, thick with intent, yet I held my focus on the flickering screen, allowing the tension to swell in the air around us. With deliberate slowness, I reached behind me, unzipping the dress. It slipped away, cascading down my body and pooling softly at my feet. The black lace lingerie I wore beneath was unveiled, its intricate patterns glimmering in the soft light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat, his hands balling into tight fists at his sides, yet the flicker of desire in his eyes betrayed the turmoil within him. I moved closer, my presence a gentle comfort as I offered him the space to express his thoughts and fears. He trembled beneath my fingertips, his gaze flickering up to lock with mine. "It's okay," I murmured, my voice a gentle whisper yet unwavering. "This tale unfolds around you. It's a journey to unveil the stunning essence that lies within you." He swallowed hard, his cheeks igniting with a deep crimson hue, yet he remained rooted, unwilling to pull away. I leaned in closer, my lips barely grazing his in a tender kiss, a soft promise meant to soothe rather than spark a fire. He responded with hesitation, his hands lingering in the air before finally resting gently on my waist. As I withdrew, his eyes revealed a tumultuous blend of emotions, gratitude intertwined with desire, shadowed by a lingering uncertainty that hung in the air between us. A gentle smile played on my lips as my fingers brushed against the waistband of his pants. "Allow me to assist you," I murmured, my voice a soothing embrace in the shadows. He nodded, his breath hitching in anticipation, as I slowly pulled his pants down, exposing the root of his deepest insecurities. For a fleeting moment I halted, absorbing the sight of him, and the palpable weight of his anxiety enveloped the room. "Ethan," I whispered softly, my fingers brushing against his thigh, a delicate touch that lingered in the air between us. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Not a single thing. Indeed, you are nothing short of extraordinary." He lifted his gaze to meet mine, his eyes probing for a glimmer of reassurance, and I offered him a subtle, encouraging nod. With deliberate care, I started to lead him with my hand. My touch, a blend of softness and strength. His breath caught in his throat, a low groan slipping from his lips as his body reacted instinctively. I moved with a measured slowness, my eyes fixed on his face, searching for any flicker of unease that might betray his thoughts. Instead, I witnessed pure ecstasy, the tightness in his muscles dissolving, giving way to an overwhelming wave of liberation. The moment arrived swiftly. Ethan reached his peak sooner than either of us had anticipated, his body trembling as a deep, primal moan escaped his lips. The air crackled with tension, a palpable intimacy enveloping us. I lingered by his side, my hand gently resting on his thigh as he struggled to regain his breath. Silence hung heavily between us, stretching out like an eternity. The room pulsed with a silent intensity, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken feelings. Ethan's face was flushed, a whirlwind of surprise and relief etched across his features. A faint smile danced at the corners of his lips, and as his eyes locked onto mine, a warmth surged through me, igniting a longing that made my chest ache. "Thank you, Eleanor. I find myself at a loss for words. I just can't shake this feeling." Silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words. I interjected softly, my voice laced with warmth and tenderness. "I stand by your side, Ethan, unwavering and resolute, forever." His smile was faint, yet it carried the weight of relief as the tension in his body began to dissipate. In that fleeting moment, I understood that he felt truly seen, truly accepted. It was a small step, yet it held profound significance, and I was resolute in my mission to lead him through the journey ahead. We lingered in that moment, the flickering images on the screen becoming mere whispers, as the air around us thickened with a profound sense of restoration. In that intimate, vulnerable moment, the air thick with unspoken truths, our bond deepened, and Ethan began to reclaim a fragment of himself that had long been shrouded in shame. The room lay in a heavy silence. The only sound breaking the stillness was the faint, persistent hum of the television, casting an eerie glow in the dim light. Ethan and I nestled together on the sofa, the atmosphere around us crackling with a palpable intimacy that was both soothing and exhilarating. He struggled to regain his breath, his face a deep shade of crimson, a whirlwind of surprise, and a hint of embarrassment dancing across his features. "I never saw that coming," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper, tinged with a hint of embarrassment. A soft chuckle escaped my lips as I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, the moment feeling charged with unspoken possibilities. "It's perfectly understandable, Ethan. When faced with something so fresh and overwhelming, it's only natural to feel this way. Don't let it consume you." He nodded, yet the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes betrayed his true feelings. This was it, a turning point, a golden opportunity to ignite his confidence and restore his sense of control. Silently, I leaned in closer, my body grazing softly against his, the air thick with unspoken tension. The warmth of his skin radiated against my fingertips, and I sensed the subtle tension that coursed through him at my touch. "You know," I murmured, my voice tinged with a teasing lilt. "Sometimes it's not the duration that matters, but the thrill of the experience. If you're feeling adventurous, we can always dive into a second round together." Ethan's eyes grew wide, his breath catching in his throat as he stared at me. "Is that true?" I nodded, a flicker of a smile dancing at the corners of my lips. "Is that true? Yet, the choice is yours alone." He paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as his hands danced restlessly in his lap before he finally nodded. "Understood. Let's dive in." I moved in closer, my fingertips gliding gently over his arm, the warmth of his skin igniting a spark within me as I leaned in, planting a tender kiss on his neck. He trembled beneath my fingertips, his breath hitching in a rapid rhythm, and I sensed the tightness in his body slowly dissolving. "This tale unfolds around you, about guiding you towards a sense of well-being." I pressed on, my fingers gliding over his skin, each caress intentional and filled with a tantalizing allure. "Ooh." I glided past him, my motions languid and deliberate, until I sensed him stirring once more. With a deep, primal groan, he surrendered to the moment, his head tilting back against the sofa as his body reacted instinctively. This time, I savored each second, stretching the moment and allowing the tension to swell around me. I pressed my lips against his, pouring all my longing into the kiss, as my hands explored the contours of his chest and slid down his torso, igniting a fire within him that left him trembling with desire. Eleanor stood at the edge of the forest, her heart racing as the shadows danced around her. The air was thick with anticipation, and she could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down her spine, and she knew that something awaited her just beyond the trees. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. He gasped, his voice thick with longing. I stood at the edge of the precipice, the wind howling around me like a restless spirit. Below, the churning waves crashed against the jagged rocks, their fury echoing the turmoil within my heart. Each breath felt heavy with anticipation, as if the very air was charged with the weight of the moment. I could feel the pulse of the world beneath my feet, a reminder that everything was about to change. The horizon stretched endlessly before me, a canvas of possibilities waiting to be painted with my choices. In that instant, I knew I was on the brink of something monumental, a journey that would test the limits of my courage and resolve. It's time to take action. I leaned back just enough to lock eyes with him, the intensity of the moment electrifying the air between us. His eyes were deep and shadowy, brimming with a potent blend of yearning and fragility, and in that instant, I realized we stood on the brink of something transformative for us both. Do you truly believe that? He nodded, his hands moving with purpose to encircle my waist. Absolutely, without a doubt. A gentle smile graced my lips, yet a deep ache of affection swelled within my heart for him. With deliberate care, I urged him to recline on the sofa. His hands quivered ever so slightly as they gripped me, his breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. As I descended, the weight of the moment enveloped me, charged with raw emotion and the profound bond that had blossomed between us. He let out a low groan, his fingers gripping my hips with a fierce intensity, and I held my breath, allowing him to acclimate to the overwhelming sensation. The experience unfolded in ways I could never have anticipated. It transcended the physical realm, weaving through the emotional landscape, creating an intimate bond that felt profoundly personal. His eyes revealed a deep vulnerability, a silent plea for connection. He clung to me, as if I were his only anchor in a turbulent sea. And in that instant, I understood that this moment transcended mere pleasure. It revolved around delicate threads of trust, the warmth of acceptance, and the profound connection forged through a mutual understanding of desires and boundaries. We moved in a seamless rhythm, an unspoken connection binding us, the air thick with the cadence of our breaths. Ethan's body quaked with intensity, his hands clutching my hips as he fought to maintain his grip. "Let go," I whispered, my voice a gentle caress, urging him to release his burdens. He nodded, his eyes fluttering shut as he succumbed to the overwhelming sensation. His finale was electric, his body lifting off the sofa in a primal surge as a deep, guttural moan escaped his lips. I remained by his side until he finally succumbed, collapsing onto the cushions, his chest rising and falling in desperate gasps. We lingered in the stillness, the room enveloped in silence, broken only by the rhythm of our breaths intertwining. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a palpable sense of healing and connection weaving itself between us, revealing a bond far deeper than either of us had ever dared to imagine. Ethan turned to me, his eyes shimmering with a blend of gratitude and deep affection. "Thank you, Eleanor." Words escape me and gratitude swells within me like a tide, overwhelming and profound. With a gentle smile, I swept a stray lock of hair from his forehead, my fingers lingering for a moment as the world around us faded away. "No need for gratitude. I'm here for you, Ethan. Always ready to stand by your side. Forever." He nodded, his expression steady yet brimming with unspoken feelings, and in that instant, I understood that he felt truly seen, truly accepted. It was a small step, yet it held profound significance, and I was resolute in my commitment to lead him through the journey ahead. As we finally said our goodbyes for the night, a whirlwind of emotions surged within me. Pride swelled in my chest for the courage he had displayed. Relief washed over me as I sensed he was rediscovering his true self, and a deep, quiet gratitude settled in my heart for the unbreakable bond we had forged. Ethan possessed a strength he had yet to recognize, and I was resolute in my mission to awaken that power within him, come what may. The morning light poured through the kitchen windows, casting a warm golden glow as Ethan and I settled at the table, our steaming mugs of coffee cradled in our hands. The air hung heavy with an electric tension, the echoes of the previous night still reverberating in the silence that enveloped us. Ethan swirled his coffee, his eyes locked onto the mesmerizing dance of the dark liquid, lost in thought. He appeared more composed than I had witnessed in weeks, yet a shadow of contemplation lingered in his gaze, revealing that he was still grappling with the weight of everything that had transpired. "What emotions stir within you this morning?" I inquired, shattering the stillness with a soft touch. He lifted his gaze, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Much improved indeed. Last night was a turning point. It brought solace." With a nod, a wave of relief surged through me. Joy swelled within me, a deep and genuine gladness that I couldn't contain. He paused, his fingers drumming anxiously against the mug, a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. "Eleanor, I must tell you, the depth of my gratitude for everything you've done for me is beyond words. It's more than just last night. It's the unwavering presence you've always offered, a constant in the ever-changing tides of my life. Your presence has been my lifeline in this journey. I truly don't know how I would have made it without you." His words crashed over me like a relentless tide, and I could feel a knot tightening in my throat. "Ethan, there's no need for gratitude. Your well-being means everything to me. I want you to embrace the incredible worth that lies within you." He nodded, his expression grave and intense. "I understand, but what we have unleashed, the situation is far from simple. You've been my mentor, my friend, and now it is transformed into something deeper, something unspoken yet palpable between us. And I can't afford to ruin it." I inhaled sharply, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. "Ethan, we need to confront the truth of what this really signifies." Last night unfolded with a whirlwind of intensity and emotion, weaving a deeper connection between us. Yet as dawn breaks, we find ourselves at a crossroads, grappling with the question of what lies ahead, and what this newfound depth truly signifies for our journey together. His gaze locked onto mine, a deep intensity swirling within his eyes, as if he were searching for something hidden beneath the surface. "I can't bear the thought of losing what we share, no matter what it is, friendship, mentorship, or something deeper. I can't bear the thought of jeopardizing it. Yet, I can't shake the feeling that I must acknowledge the weight of last night. It held a significance that I can't simply ignore." I nodded, my heart heavy with a tumult of emotion swirling within me. My heart echoes that sentiment. Last night held a significance that neither of us can ignore, yet we must tread carefully, unraveling the threads of our journey together, one step at a time. He paused, the weight of his thoughts hanging in the air, before finally finding the courage to speak once more. "Can we truly hold on to this, whatever it may be, without it spiraling into chaos?" A faint smile tugged at my lips as I extended my hand, resting it gently on his arm. "We can do it, but it will demand unwavering honesty and a deep commitment to communication. We must lay bare our emotions and desires, unearthing the truths that lie beneath the surface. When the tangled web of our complexities threatens to ensnare us, we must summon the courage to pause and reassess our path." He nodded, his expression filled with a deep sincerity that seemed to resonate in the air around him. "All right, I can make that happen because you mean the world to me, Eleanor. More than you might ever understand." I fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill from my eyes. "Your significance to me runs deep, Ethan, and my heart swells with pride at the strides you've taken. Yet, what we are constructing here transcends mere assistance. It has evolved into a shared journey, a complex tapestry woven from our intertwined destinies. This is a puzzle we must solve together, and the stakes have never been higher." He smiled, his eyes shimmering with an unspoken assurance that drew others in like moths to a flame. "All right, let's do this together." We lingered in silence, the heavy tension of our unspoken words hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. The morning shimmered with an unusual brightness, crackling with an electric energy that hinted at the extraordinary. We had stepped into uncharted territory, a point of no return, yet I felt a fierce determination that we would confront whatever lay ahead side by side, armed with truth, compassion, and the unbreakable connection we had forged. At last, Ethan rose to his feet. I should probably make my way out now. There's a class waiting for me. I nodded, rising to my feet with a sense of purpose. By all means, don't let me hold you back. With a moment of uncertainty hanging in the air, he took a step forward, enveloping me in a warm embrace. As he stepped back, his gaze lingered on me, a final smile dancing on his lips before he vanished through the door. I stood there, captivated, as he vanished into the light, his figure framed by the golden rays that spilled from the doorway. In the stillness of the kitchen, I found myself lost in thought, replaying the events of the previous night and the weighty conversation that had just unfolded. This transcended mere physical connection. The connection between us had grown in ways I never saw coming. It was a tangled web of questions and uncertainties, yet within it flickered a glimmer of hope. The morning unfolded in a hush, each of us bearing the heavy burden of our bond and the tantalizing promise of what lay ahead.